Hello, in this video I'm going to show you my Hornby 00 track layout, setup, and also the trains that I have and the various bits of scenery. So here is a time-lapse of me setting the track up. I designed it using a free program called SCARM, which I use on my desktop computer. And this is about the third version of this layout. Now, it's not ideal that we're putting up a sort of temporary layout here, and eventually I'd like to make a permanent one. This layout's basically put up on 3 temporary trestle tables. It's about 1.5 meters wide by 2 meters long. I'm going to leave links down below to the various things we look at in case you want to buy them for yourself. Here we can see the main station, which is a through station, and there's a footbridge connecting the 2 platforms. You can see some canopies also over the platforms as well. We'll take a closer look at this later, but there's obviously a freight train next to the station as well. But this is the first train we're going to look at. It's a Bachmann Class 105 diesel multiple unit. Now this model is of particular interest to me because on the front of it, it says Lowestoft, and that's actually local to me. This is a really detailed model, as a lot of the Bachmann models are. There are little people inside the carriages, and there are lights on the front of the train. So the little passengers have boarded the train, so we're going to start the train up, and this is a sound unit, so we'll get to hear that. As this model departs from the station, you can see how detailed this model is. I even think that these Bachmann trains look better just rolling around compared to Hornby trains. And as you can see, there are actually lights on the front and rear of this train, including lights inside the driver's cabin. This really is a very beautiful model. Now, these Bachmann trains are more expensive than normal Hornby models, but I think given the level of detail, the sound, the way this train looks when it's rolling around, I really think it's worth it. Now, obviously this is a digital track layout, and this is a digital train with a digital decoder in it, which means that you can do things like control the sounds on the train and do things like play a horn. You can even control the lights in the cabin and on the front of the train independently. These digital kits really offer a lot of control over the trains. And obviously one of the best things is that you can easily have multiple trains on the same track, which you couldn't do when I was a kid. So next we're going to move on to a more famous train, and that is the Flying Scotsman. So this is actually a Hornby train, a kit which I bought for about £100. It was on special offer. But this train didn't originally have sound, so we were able to buy a digital sound decoder. It was also an analog train originally. And that's basically allowed us to use this on this digital layout and have proper Flying Scotsman or steam train sounds. You can see it's got some nice carriages as well, and obviously it's just a really kind of attractive train. Next up we have the Hornby Class 40 diesel locomotive, and this is a really attractive model. It's also a really powerful model. It seems to be able to pull this full rake here. In fact, it seems to pull anything you throw at it. Now in general, a lot of the Hornby scenery is overpriced because it's just made of plastic. So in general, we buy the Skaledale stuff because it's made of metal, looks more detailed, you just feel like you're getting better value for money. But there is an exception actually. This suspension bridge, I think, adds a lot to a train layout, and it only costs about £30. Now, it's by Hornby and it is made of plastic, but it's just so significant and adds a kind of another dimension to your track that it's definitely worth the money, and I think you'll agree from this video footage that it looks really spectacular. And as this diesel locomotive crosses the suspension bridge for the last time, you can see these Class 2 British Rail carriages which also have internal lighting, which is quite subtle, but it looks really good. Next up, we've got this little steam train which we mainly bought because it came in a digital kit and it was a good price. And we're going to move this train onto this Hornby turntable. Now these are quite expensive, they're about £60. Do you know what, to get them to work on a digital layout is really quite a bit of work, and they're quite temperamental. We've had to fix this a few times, but if you're willing to persist with it and keep maintaining it, it's a pretty nice feature to add to a train set. We actually control the turntable using an analog system, and then we have to have separate digital feeds to all of the tracks so that the trains actually work on the track. Next up, we have the Intercity 225 train. Now, this is quite special to me because this is the first train I ever got. I got this in the early 90s when I was a little kid for a Christmas present. And you can see that I've made some significant changes to this originally analog train since then, including lighting inside the carriages and lighting on the front and the rear of the engine itself. And I think this is actually a really nice model. I know the lights are a little bit bright on it, but to be honest, I think they look pretty good. I particularly like the lights on the front shining on the track as it comes towards the camera. I think that looks amazing. So the lighting in the carriages were a kit that I bought off eBay, and yes, I'll leave a link to those down below. The lighting on the engine is actually custom lighting, so I just bought some resistors and LEDs and drilled some little holes in the engine, and there's some quite simple wiring guides on the internet for attaching these things to DCC decoders. One of the most striking things about this old Intercity train is that it actually has a ring-field motor, which is an old type of Hornby motor, and there's a very distinctive smell, and they take a little bit of maintenance to keep them working. Next up, we have the Mallard, which is another famous train, but in actual fact this isn't a Mallard, this is actually a Gadwell. But I bought this because it was about 20 or 30 quid cheaper than the Mallard. And I'm using this as a freight train, so we've got lots of these little tiny freight carriages being pulled along. Now, I'm nowhere near old enough to remember this train when it was new, but I think it's a really mean design. It just looks really sort of imposing. And as it moves around the track, you can see various Skaledale buildings, banks, shops and things like that. And while they're not the best, there are various Hornby points in this layout to join the loops together. And all of these things together really add up to quite an immersive train set to play with, in inverted commas. And as I said at the beginning of this video, I'd love to make this layout permanent. I'd also like to use E-Link so that you could control this using, say, a laptop. I think it would add another dimension to the layout. I hope you've enjoyed this little overview of my train layout. If you'd like to know any more about how I constructed this track using SCARM, or if you'd like to know how you convert trains to DCC, how I added lighting to the carriages and to the engine of the Intercity 225, or if you'd like to know any more about the scenery or anything basically to do with this train set, leave a comment down below and I'll do my best to get back to you. I might even make some follow-up videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time for another video.